Edward Sanders was one of the most influential men in the capital. A renowned businessman and Hollywood actor, he owned a billion-dollar insurance company. He lived alone in a mansion in the city center, a property that showcased his power and wealth. However, despite his busy life filled with commitments, Edward felt deeply lonely and sad. Each night after events and meetings, he returned to the vastness of his house where silence prevailed. The halls, once filled with laughter and conversations, were now just echoes of his solitude. Sitting in his leather chair, looking out at the illuminated city, Edward reflected on how, even surrounded by people, he felt utterly alone. What made this loneliness even more disturbing was the realization that, despite all his successes and achievements, he had no one to share his victories and defeats with. There was an emotional void that money could not fill. Edward never admitted this to himself or others, always maintaining a facade of strength and control. But deep down, he knew something was profoundly wrong. Each night was a painful reminder of his condition, and each morning brought a new hope for change, which quickly dissipated in the day's routine. Edward's loneliness was not just a matter of lack of company. It was an existential loneliness, a void that consumed his joy and purpose. Even with all the material possessions one could desire, he felt incomplete. Each day, the realization that his life lacked the meaning he sought became clearer. This was Edward Sanders' dilemma, a man who had everything but at the same time had nothing. His journey was about to take an unexpected turn, but for now, he was stuck in a cycle of loneliness and sadness that seemed endless. Emma had been more than just a maid to Edward. She was his confidant and a constant presence in his life. When Emma announced that she was leaving her job to move with her family to the countryside, Edward was taken aback. She had worked for him for 15 years, and her departure was not just the loss of an employee, but someone he considered part of his daily routine. Initially, Edward had a lot of resistance in accepting her due to her skin color, but over the years, he learned to respect her and value her loyalty and dedication. Emma's decision to leave was motivated by the need to be closer to nature and provide a better life for her family. This change was a shock for Edward, who was used to a meticulously organized and regulated life. He relied on Emma to keep his house in order and, more importantly, to provide a sense of normalcy amid the chaos of his professional life. Emma's departure marked the beginning of a transformation in Edward's life, which until then had been trapped in a sad and lonely routine. With Emma's departure, Edward found himself forced to deal with the reality of his loneliness more directly. Without Emma's constant and reassuring presence, he had to confront his own demons and the void she left behind. This was a turning point in his life, where he began to realize that he needed more than just a routine to feel complete. The transformation was just beginning, and Emma's departure was the catalyst that started this change. Edward was about to embark on a journey of self-discovery that would change his life forever, but for now, he was just beginning to understand how deep his need for connection and meaning was. After Emma left, Edward instructed his secretary to hire a new maid. The task was not simple, as Emma had set a standard of excellence that was hard to match. After several interviews, Olivia was selected. She was a young black woman, shy and modest, with a simplicity that contrasted sharply with the luxury and opulence of Edward's house. Coming from a poor family, Olivia was used to working hard and had a humility that Edward considered essential for the job. However, his reasons for choosing her went beyond competence. Edward, perhaps unconsciously, was looking for someone who would not only serve but bring new energy into his life. Olivia began working and from the start proved to be efficient and careful. Her presence was discreet, but she managed to keep the house in perfect order. Edward, always demanding, was impressed by the dedication and attention to detail that Olivia demonstrated. However, there was an element of distrust. Edward, marked by past experiences, decided to test Olivia's honesty. He instructed the installation of security cameras in strategic points and left a safe slightly open with a considerable amount of money, watching her actions closely. Olivia, on the other hand, was aware of the weight of her responsibility. Working for a man like Edward Sanders was a unique opportunity that she could not waste. She dedicated herself to the job with fervor, unaware that she was being watched. For her, this was a chance to change her family's life and build a better future. Edward's initial distrust was a challenge she needed to overcome. Olivia's arrival brought a new dynamic to Edward's life. Her simplicity and humility began to penetrate the hard shell he had built around himself. However, the true reasons why Edward had chosen someone so simple were still hidden, both from him and Olivia. This beginning, marked by tests and distrust, was just the prelude to a series of events that would profoundly transform both their lives. Edward did not yet know, but Olivia would be the key to his transformation, bringing to light issues and revelations he never imagined facing. In the first days of work, Olivia showed herself to be extremely efficient and careful. She performed her tasks with a precision that impressed Edward. However, his distrust did not diminish. He decided to test her honesty subtly, leaving a slightly open safe with money and monitoring her with security cameras. For Edward, this test was a way to ensure that his new maid was trustworthy. He watched every movement of Olivia through the screens in his office, waiting to see any sign of dishonesty. Olivia, on the other hand, was completely unaware of the test. Her dedication to the job was genuine, motivated by the need to support her family and gratitude for the opportunity given to her. She strived to do her best, unaware that she was under constant surveillance. Each day was a new opportunity to show her worth and prove that she was capable of meeting the expectations of her demanding employer. However, an unexpected incident began to change Edward's perception. During one of her cleaning routines, Olivia found an old photo album. Curious, she started flipping through the pages, looking at the images of a younger Edward next to people she did not know. When she picked up one of the photos, she seemed particularly interested. Edward, watching everything through the cameras, felt a chill of distrust. Why was she so interested in his personal photos? He began to suspect that Olivia might have other motives for being there. This incident awakened a new wave of distrust in Edward. He began to think that Olivia might be a disguised journalist or a spy sent by a competitor. The idea of being betrayed again after so many disappointments made him close himself off even more. Determined to confront her, Edward called Olivia into his office. With calculated coldness, he questioned her about the photo, hoping to catch some inconsistency in her answers. Olivia, surprised by the accusation, revealed that she had picked up the photo because it showed her mother next to Edward. This unexpected revelation left Edward stunned. Suddenly he realized that there was much more to Olivia than he had imagined. The unexpected connection between their families brought up a series of questions and feelings that Edward was not prepared to face. This moment marked the beginning of a series of revelations that would completely change the lives of both Edward and Olivia. The photo album incident was a turning point in the relationship between Edward and Olivia. When Edward discovered through the security cameras that Olivia had picked up a photo from his personal album, he was alarmed. Distrust gnawed at his judgment, leading him to suspect that Olivia might have ulterior motives. He began to think she might be a journalist or paparazzi in disguise, or even a spy sent by a competitor. These thoughts made him uneasy, and he decided to confront her to find out the truth. When confronted, Olivia was visibly nervous. She did not expect Edward to be watching her so closely. However, she knew she needed to be honest. With a trembling voice, she explained that she had picked up the photo because it showed her mother next to Edward. This revelation left Edward perplexed. He never realized how much she meant to him until that moment. The memories began to flood back, bringing to light moments he had forgotten or repressed. He remembered Violet as a constant and comforting presence in his life, someone he could trust. Olivia's revelation brought a new perspective on his past, forcing him to reconsider his own feelings and actions. This conversation was also a moment of vulnerability for Olivia. She shared her own struggles and challenges, growing up in a humble family and facing discrimination and prejudice. For her, working for Edward was a unique opportunity that she could not waste. She dedicated herself to the job with fervor, not knowing she was being watched. Each day was a new opportunity to show her worth and prove that she was capable of meeting the expectations of her demanding employer. The revelation of Olivia was a turning point for Edward. He realized that there was much more in his life and his past than he had admitted. This new perspective forced him to reevaluate his priorities and the way he treated the people around him. From that moment on, he committed to knowing better his new maid and understanding the true connection between their families. This journey of discovery and redemption would not be easy, but Edward was determined to move forward and discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Edward recalled his romance with Violet, a charming young woman he met shortly after university. Violet was everything he ever wanted in a partner: intelligent, kind, and incredibly beautiful. They quickly became inseparable, sharing dreams and plans for the future. In those days, life seemed full of possibilities, and their love blossomed with every moment they spent together. Edward and Violet planned to marry, build a life together, and face the world as an invincible team. However, Edward's career began to take an upward turn that demanded more of his time and attention. He was promoted to a management position in a branch overseas, which meant he would have to move for an indefinite period. This promotion was a unique opportunity for Edward, something he could not refuse. Violet, understanding and supportive, encouraged him to take the offer, even though it meant a temporary separation. During the time Edward was overseas, the distance began to create a barrier between them. They tried to keep in touch through letters and phone calls, but communication was sporadic and difficult. Insecurities began to arise, and the love that once seemed unbreakable started to show signs of strain. In a moment of desperation and longing, Edward received a letter from Violet ending the relationship. She explained that the distance and uncertainty about their future were too much for her to bear. This letter devastated Edward, leaving him with a void he could never fill. Edward threw himself into work, trying to forget the pain of the separation. He became one of the wealthiest and most successful men in the country, but the bitterness of the past continued to haunt him. Professional success could not erase the emotional scars left by Violet. He constantly wondered what might have been if he had made different choices. The memory of Violet was a constant reminder of what he had lost and what he could never regain. The love story between Edward and Violet was a mix of passion, misunderstandings, and regrets. It shaped who he became and influenced his decisions and behaviors. Revisiting these memories was painful but necessary. Edward needed to understand his past to move forward. He began to realize that, to find peace and happiness, he had to face these ghosts and seek a form of reconciliation, not only with Violet, but with himself. The promotion that led to the separation from Violet was a crucial moment in Edward's life. He learned that the choices we make have profound and lasting consequences. The successful career he built could not erase the emotional scars left by the separation. This realization forced him to confront his priorities and seek a way to find peace and closure for the most painful chapter of his life. After the devastating separation from Violet, Edward returned to his home country determined to focus on his career. He channeled all the pain and frustration into work, quickly rising to the top of his company. His tireless efforts and innovative vision soon made him one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the country. Edward built an empire, but the price of this success was the bitterness and loneliness that accompanied him at every step. Edward's rise was marked by numerous achievements. He led strategic expansions, acquired competing companies, and established new partnerships that solidified his market position. Each professional victory was a way to mask the personal pain he carried. In the eyes of the world, Edward was an example of success, but few knew the emptiness he felt inside. He became a master at hiding his true emotions, always maintaining a facade of strength and confidence. However, the loneliness and sadness could not be entirely ignored. Edward often found himself reflecting on his life, questioning whether all the professional success was worth it without someone to share it with. He remembered the nights when he returned to his immense mansion, where silence was his only companion. The bitterness of the past, especially the loss of Violet, still haunted him, making it impossible for him to find genuine peace and happiness. The years passed, and despite all his achievements, Edward began to realize that something fundamental was missing in his life. He had wealth, power, and influence, but he lacked love, joy, and true purpose. This realization led him to an existential crisis. He began to wonder if he had made the right decisions and if all his effort and sacrifice were really worth it. Professional success could not fill the void left by the absence of Violet, and the feeling of incompleteness grew each day. Edward knew he needed to do something to change his situation. Introspection led him to consider the possibility of looking for Violet and trying to understand what really happened between them. He felt that to move forward, He needed to resolve the unfinished business of the past. The prospect of facing Violet again was frightening, but Edward was determined to find answers, and perhaps a way to reconcile. Edward's rise in the business world was impressive, but it also showed the limitations of material success. He learned that the true meaning of life cannot be measured only in terms of professional achievements. The search for something deeper and more meaningful became Edward's new goal, a journey he knew he needed to undertake to find the peace and happiness that had always eluded him. The revelation of Olivia about the photo and her connection with Edward left him in a state of shock and confusion. Determined to get answers, he decided to confront Olivia directly. He called her for a private conversation in his office, a place he rarely used for personal matters. Olivia entered the office nervous, aware that the discussion to follow would be intense and possibly transformative. Edward began the conversation with calculated coldness, asking why Olivia had taken the photo and what she knew about their past. Olivia, although scared, remained calm and explained again that her mother, Violet, had worked for him many years ago. She told how Violet always spoke of him with affection and how she had kept that photo as a memento of happy times. This revelation brought tears to Edward's eyes, as he had no idea of the impact he had had on Violet's life and, by extension, on Olivia's. Olivia's story was painful and moving. She spoke of the difficulties she faced growing up in a poor family and dealing with discrimination and prejudice because of her skin color. She shared her struggles to find and keep a decent job, and how the opportunity to work for Edward was a chance to change her life and her family's life. Edward listened in silence, feeling a mixture of guilt and empathy. He realized he had judged Olivia unfairly and that his initial distrust had been a mistake. As the conversation continued, Edward began to see Olivia in a new light. She was not just a maid. She was a courageous and resilient young woman determined to overcome adversity and build a better future. The connection between their families was deep and meaningful, something Edward could no longer ignore. He began to realize that he needed to confront not only the ghosts of his past, but also the barriers he had erected around his heart. The confrontation with Olivia was a moment of clarity for Edward. He saw in her the same strength and determination that he admired in Violet. This realization motivated him to seek a way to honor Violet's memory and help Olivia achieve her goals. He decided he needed to learn more about Olivia's story and support her journey in any way he could. This commitment marked the beginning of a new phase in his life, a phase of redemption and personal growth. Edward and Olivia began to build a relationship based on mutual trust and respect. The initial confrontation, which had started with distrust and tension, transformed into an unexpected partnership. Edward knew he had much to learn from Olivia, and that together they could face the challenges of the past and build a brighter future. This journey of discovery and redemption would be long and difficult, but Edward was determined to move forward, guided by truth and love. Olivia, by sharing her story with Edward, revealed the difficulties she faced throughout her life due to discrimination and prejudice. Growing up in a poor community, she and her family constantly dealt with judgments and barriers simply because of their skin color. Olivia always knew she would have to work twice as hard to receive half the recognition others received. From a young age, she dreamed of a better future, but she knew the path would be arduous and full of challenges. The discrimination Olivia faced was not only social but also institutional. She had difficulty getting decent jobs, and when she did, she was often treated unfairly and disrespectfully. Despite this, Olivia kept her head high and continued to fight for her dreams. Her resilience and determination were remarkable, and she never let prejudice define her. Instead, she used every negative experience as motivation to surpass herself and prove her worth. Working for Edward, Olivia saw an opportunity to change her life and her family's life. She knew this job could be a springboard to something greater, a chance to show her skills and dedication. However, Edward's initial distrust was an additional challenge. Olivia knew she needed to prove her honesty and competence, not only to keep the job, but also to gain Edward's respect and trust. Olivia's story touched Edward deeply. He began to realize the privilege he had and the injustices others faced daily. Olivia's struggles opened his eyes to realities he had ignored or been unaware of. This new perspective made Edward start questioning not only his attitudes, but also the structures and systems that perpetuated discrimination. He felt a growing responsibility to use his influence and resources to make a positive difference. Olivia and Edward, united by their experiences and challenges, began to develop a relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Olivia saw in Edward someone who, despite his mistakes and prejudices, was willing to learn and grow. Edward, in turn, found in Olivia a source of inspiration and strength. Together, they began to imagine ways to combat discrimination and create opportunities for those who, like Olivia, faced unjust obstacles. Olivia's journey was a reflection of the struggle of many who face discrimination and prejudice. Her story was a testament to human resilience and the ability to overcome adversity. By sharing her experiences with Edward, Olivia not only changed her own life, but also began to transform his worldview. From this point on, Edward committed to supporting Olivia and working to create a more just and inclusive environment, both in his company and in his personal life. Together, they were ready to face the challenges to come and build a better future. Edward decided to confront Violet about the past and finally understand what really happened between them. Driven by the desire to clear up the doubts he had carried for years, he arranged a meeting. When they finally saw each other, the air was heavy with tension and repressed emotions. Violet seemed as nervous as he was, and both knew this conversation was crucial to obtaining the closure they never had. The mystery surrounding the sudden end of their relationship hung over them. Edward was eager to hear the truth, but also feared what Violet might reveal. As they began to talk, the words came out hesitantly, but slowly, the contained emotions started to surface. The reunion brought out all the emotions they had tried to bury during years of separation. The truth can be painful, but it is liberating, Violet said, breaking the initial silence. She began to explain the events that led to the breakup, revealing that it was not just the distance that separated them. She mentioned external influences and manipulations that Edward was unaware of. Edward listened attentively, feeling a mix of relief and pain as the details unfolded. Sometimes, to move forward, you need to confront the past. This conversation was more than an exchange of information. It was a healing process for both. The question that lingered was whether Edward and Violet could find closure for their story. Violet revealed that her sister, Emily, had played a significant role in their separation. Emily never approved of their relationship and did everything to keep them apart. This meeting, therefore, not only brought clarity, but also opened new wounds. Edward realized there was much more to the past than he imagined, and this helped him understand the true circumstances of their separation. The revelation was a moment of clarity and transformation for Edward. He began to understand that much of the pain he carried was not the result of his own actions, but of external manipulations. The conversation with Violet was difficult but necessary. They left this meeting with a deeper understanding of themselves and their shared histories. However, Edward still wondered what else he might discover during this journey of rediscovery. During the conversation, Edward and Violet discovered that they were manipulated by third parties, including Violet's sister, Emily, who did not want them to be together. This revelation brought to light a hidden truth that changed the course of their lives. Edward was shocked to learn that Emily had sabotaged his relationship with Violet, planting doubts and encouraging distrust between them. The truth, although painful, was a relief for both as they finally understood that it was not their own failings that separated them. Why did Emily want to separate them? This question weighed on both of them. Violet explained that her sister had always been very protective and possessive. Emily believed that Edward was not good enough for Violet and feared that their relationship would distance her from the family. This discovery of betrayal and manipulation deepened the pain they both felt, but it also brought some relief. Knowing that it was not them but external circumstances that caused the separation helped ease some of the past bitterness. The truth can be painful, but it is liberating, Edward said, echoing Violet's words. The revelation was a blow, but it was also a key to understanding. Discovering that they were victims of manipulation allowed Edward and Violet to see their stories in a new light. They were not the villains of their own narrative. They were victims of the actions of others. How would Edward and Violet react to this revelation? The knowledge of the truth brought a new perspective on their past and present. Edward felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at having been manipulated, and relief at finally understanding what happened. Violet, in turn, felt deep sadness for her sister's actions, but also a new hope. This understanding opened the door to a possible reconciliation. The truth about the past allowed Edward and Violet to understand that they were victims of circumstances beyond their control. This was a transformative moment for both. They began to see the possibility of a future together, free from the shadows of the past. And now, what would they do with this new information? The revelation brought clarity, but also the need to decide on the next steps in their lives. After the revelation of the truth, Edward and Violet reconciled, accepting that they were victims of circumstances and promising to rebuild their lost relationship. This reunion marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. They decided to leave behind the hurts and grudges, focusing on building a future together based on honesty and understanding. It was now up to Edward and Violet to overcome the obstacles of the past and rebuild their relationship. They knew it would not be easy, but they were determined to try. The reconciliation brought hope and a new perspective for both. Edward, who had lived in bitterness for so long, began to see a brighter future alongside Violet. He realized that, despite everything, true love can survive any storm. True love can survive any storm, Violet said, holding Edward's hand. These words resonated deeply with Edward, who felt a renewed determination to make the relationship work this time. The question now was, what did the future hold for Edward and Violet? They were ready to face the challenges together, with a new understanding and respect for each other. The reconciliation with Violet gave Edward a new chance to find happiness and peace. It was a moment of transformation for him, who finally began to leave behind the ghosts of the past. Edward's life began to change in ways he never imagined, and he was ready to embrace this new opportunity. But there was still one last piece of the puzzle that needed to be resolved. The future looked promising, but Edward knew they needed to work together to maintain this new harmony. They were ready to face any challenge, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. Life was finally getting back on track, and Edward felt more hopeful than ever. Edward, Violet, and Olivia began to build a new life together, overcoming past mistakes and focusing on a promising and harmonious future. This new family dynamic brought hope and renewal for all. They started planning their lives in a way that they could support each other, creating an environment of love and respect. What would Edward's new life with Violet and Olivia be like? This was a mystery they were eager to unravel. The beginning of a new life is always full of challenges and opportunities. Each of them had their own battles to face, but together they were determined to create a better future. Edward felt a new energy and purpose, something he had not experienced in a long time. A true family is built with love, respect, and understanding, Edward said, reflecting on his new life. These words summarized the new philosophy he and Violet were adopting. They were determined to create a family where each member felt valued and supported. Olivia, who had played a crucial role in Edward's transformation, also became a vital part of this new family. The question now was, could they maintain this new harmony? They knew it would not be easy, but they were committed to making it work. The new life represented a second chance for all, an opportunity to grow and find true happiness. Edward, who had lived in solitude and regret for so long, finally began to see the light at the end of the tunnel. What did the future hold for this new family? This was the last big question. They were ready to face any challenge, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. Life was finally taking a positive turn, and Edward was determined to make the best of this second chance. Hope and determination guided their steps, and they were ready to embrace whatever the future held for them. Edward reflected on the lessons learned and how love and honesty were fundamental to overcoming the obstacles he faced. He now looked to the future with hope and determination, ready to embrace new opportunities and challenges that life offered. Edward's journey was a testament that, with love and honesty, it is possible to overcome any obstacle. What other surprises does life have in store for Edward? This was a question he still pondered, but with a new sense of optimism. Edward's story is a testament that the past does not define who we are. It is our choices and actions that shape our future. He finally found peace and hope, prepared for a bright future. What lessons can we learn from Edward's story? His story teaches us that no matter how difficult the challenges we face, there is always a chance for redemption and renewal. With determination, love, and honesty, it is possible to overcome even the most difficult adversities. Edward shows us that life is full of second chances, and it is up to us to make the most of them. Now, with peace finally achieved, Edward was ready to embrace the future with confidence. He knew the journey would not be easy, but he was determined to make the best of every opportunity. Edward's story is a powerful reminder that, even in the darkest situations, there is always a light of hope waiting to guide us. Leave your comment about what you thought of this story and subscribe to the channel for more exciting narratives.